The events of the year 2020 have forced many of our activities into a remote context, including, of course, education. According to Sarah Cunane in 2010, the current tech-savvy generation has long complained that higher education in particular has failed to take advantage of e-learning's potential, while many other students still favor traditional in-person classes. With the sudden shift and adaptation to remote learning within the past year, we're presented with the opportunity to directly compare the effectiveness of e-learning to traditional learning. Marshall McLuhan famously remarked, "The medium is the message." Perhaps we've now reached the point where the education system will at last adapt to the digital age, bridging the gap between print culture and electronic culture. As mentioned before, the education system has generally been slow to adapt these new technologies and utilize them to their fullest potential. Now, after about a year of immersion in the digital education format, the question arises, are e-learning methods as effective as traditional learning methods? E-learning is often considered a very recent development, but it has actually been around since the 1970s. In a 2015 article, Sarah Hubackova states that e-learning was originally known as computer-based training, or CBT. CD-ROM tutorials were used in colleges and workplaces as soon as computers became widely available. According to Somik Sarkar, University of Phoenix became the first fully online educational institution in the world in 1989. Now, University of Phoenix is known as a diploma mill and has a bad reputation, which may have reflected poorly on remote education in general to the public mind. But University of Phoenix was onto something. Remote education allowed non-traditional students, such as people with full-time jobs, the opportunity to fit school into their busy schedules. The benefits of e-learning could no longer be dismissed, and online courses started going mainstream. Now, virtually every educational institution offers online courses alongside traditional ones. However, e-learning has suddenly gone from being an alternative option to becoming the norm in 2020. What are the results so far? In order to gather some data about this, I decided to conduct a little experiment in my English composition class this semester. At the beginning of fall 2020, many students expressed disappointment in having to take another semester of remote classes, especially students who recently graduated from high school and had to skip the traditional milestones such as going to the prom, graduation ceremony, and also leaving home for the first time and living in university dorms. In my English composition class, I heard several complaints like this, but I noticed that non-traditional students who were older and had their own families, some worked part-time or full-time, mentioned that the remote format was more convenient for them. Throughout the 3-month semester, I had students participate in 3 surveys sent near the beginning, middle, and end of the term. The first survey asked students to rate various e-learning methods from very ineffective to very effective. Methods included live synchronous class sessions, asynchronous class sessions, discussion boards, textbook reading, virtual office hours, writing center appointments, and so on. The second survey contained 4 questions. What is working well for you in the online learning format? What is not working well for you? Regarding online learning, what would you like to see more of in the future? And what would you like to see less of in the future? The final survey contained questions regarding demographic information such as age and gender, and asked, in general, what type of learning experience do you prefer? Traditional in-person classes, online synchronous classes, online asynchronous classes, or hybrid classes, which are defined as classes that meet in person but include online elements. I found the survey results quite interesting. To my complete surprise, the most effective of all apparently was the prototype tutorial that I created in IDT 505 for APA and MLA citations, which at the time was incomplete, and but the students liked it apparently. In the second survey, several students commented that they liked the hybrid format of the class, which was where we'd meet once a week for a live synchronous class, and then the other day was asynchronous, so students could, I would post the instructions and the assignment for the day, and students would complete their work on their own or do meet for a peer review or something like that. So many of them commented that they liked that format. They said it gave them more time to finish their work and schedule their time. As far as what was not working well, the two major themes came up in the responses. The first was that students missed just the in-person, usual day-to-day interactions. They said it's more difficult to make friends in a remote class. Some of them also said that for them, focusing in live synchronous classes is more difficult than an in-person class. As far as what students wanted to see more of in the future, it mostly had to do with interaction, so more breakout rooms where they were able to communicate with peers, or more discussions during class time. Even though most of the students said that they prefer in-person classes, I noticed a few interesting things during the semester. The average grade students earned in person was 80%, but in the remote format it was 85%. Attendance was also much better in the remote format. So even though students prefer in-person classes, probably for social reasons, interacting with peers and things like that, the remote format has some advantages. Previous research has found that students tend to perform just as well in remote learning environments as they do in traditional ones. For example, a study by Stephen Sussman and Lee Dutter at Barry University compared student learning outcomes in a remote science class compared to a traditional in-person science class, and found no significant difference in student performance. They emphasize that neither form of learning is superior to the other, but that both are good options for students depending on their preference. Other more recent articles from this year painted remote learning in a more negative light. However, these articles were written in the spring of 2020 after students quickly and unexpectedly had to make the shift to remote learning. Research on distance education prior to this big shift didn't have as much of a negative tone to it. Despite all of the negative press that e-learning has been getting, data is showing that the results actually are not all that bad. And personally, I think that from now on, e-learning should be expanded, should be improved, and should always be offered as an option, because clearly the results are just as good or even better sometimes than the traditional classes. I would even go so far to say that the traditional college format is based on an outdated concept that has roots in the Industrial Revolution. But I'm not going to get into that. Suffice it to say that e-learning is a very effective alternative to traditional learning. Thank you.